TradFi QE and crypto liquid staking, when capital efficiency becomes fragility. Flint West reporting. People think the modern financial system is a noble pipeline. Savers on one end, borrowers on the other, banks in the middle, doing honest work. That's the brochure. The machine underneath is different. The machine is a collateral engine. It takes a small set of pristine assets, especially United States treasuries, and it turns them into a foundation for many, many claims. Not one claim, not two, stacks, layers. The same collateral, pledged, repledged, and reused because the system is optimized to get maximum output per unit input. That's what efficiency means here. It means how many financial promises can we build on top of the same rock? And when the rock moves, every promise starts screaming at once. Now let's talk about the place where this engine breathes. Repo markets, repurchase agreements, reverse repos. Sounds boring, but this is the cashier of the whole operation. This is where cash and collateral swap places, nonstop. This is where the system says, here's a treasury, give me cash. Here's cash, give me a treasury. And here's the rule nobody says out loud. This works only while people trust the collateral. Because liquidity isn't money existing. Liquidity is willingness. Willingness to accept collateral at a price under stress. And when that willingness dies, you get the real definition of a liquidity crisis. Not, we ran out of money. We ran out of belief that the collateral holds. So what happens when belief breaks? You get case studies that look like isolated disasters until you realize they're all the same lesson in different clothing. Lehman. Not, oops, bad decisions. The moment counterparties stop lending against your collateral, your blood supply shuts off. And once the blood supply shuts off, it doesn't matter what your spreadsheet says you own. You can be solvent on paper and dead in reality. Because in a collateral engine, acceptability is oxygen. SVB. Again, people love to reduce it to a morality tale. But the core lesson was colder. They held risk-free assets, treasuries and long-duration government-backed paper. Risk-free means credit risk. It does not mean price risk. Rates moved, prices fell. And the moment those assets had to be converted into cash under pressure, the losses stopped being theoretical. It wasn't a credit default story. It was a collateral valuation story. And once collateral valuation becomes the problem, the system does what it always does. It calls the fire department. And that's where quantitative easing really lives. Quantitative easing is usually sold as stimulus, or money printing, or some morality play about central banks. But reverse engineer behavior under stress, and you see the function. Quantitative easing is collateral defense. A price-insensitive buyer steps in to put a floor under the assets the whole system treats as sacred. Because when your collateral is reused everywhere, you can't allow it to reprice freely. Free repricing becomes uncontrolled deleveraging, and uncontrolled deleveraging becomes a chain reaction. Collateral down, then margin calls, then forced selling, then collateral down again, then panic. So quantitative easing shows up like clockwork, not because it's trendy, but because the system is built such that past a certain point, a backstop becomes structurally required. That's traditional finance. Now watch crypto. Crypto didn't invent these sins. Crypto speed ran them. Same incentives, shorter timeline, fewer adults in the room. And what did we get? 3 collapses that each isolate a different pathology with clean edges. FTX? The sin of fake collateral. Balance sheets propped up by assets that only had value because somebody said so. Tokens printed from thin air treated as real equity. Once confidence cracked, the collateral went to zero. And when collateral goes to zero, there's no elegant unwind. There's just gravity. Celsius. The sin of rehypothecation in its pure form. The same collateral pledged in multiple places, yield promised without containment, risks smeared across the ecosystem. Traditional finance does this with layers of regulation and a lender of last resort in the background. Crypto did it raw, so it failed raw. Terra and Luna. The sin of synthetic stability without an external anchor. A stablecoin structure built as a self-referential loop. Reflexive mechanics wearing a lab coat. When the loop breaks, it doesn't correct, it collapses. Because you can't synthesize stability out of circular belief and call it engineering. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Now we get to the quiet part. The part people don't like, Because it's not as easy to meme as a bankruptcy headline. Ethereum staking, and more specifically, liquid staking. Let's be careful and precise. Staking by itself is not the scandal. The danger is what happens when staking receipts become financial Lego, and those Legos get used the same way. Treasuries get used in traditional finance, reused, repackaged, repledged, stacked. Ether gets staked. A liquid staking token is issued. That token becomes collateral somewhere else, which props up another protocol, which issues something else, which becomes collateral again. That is the same geometry as traditional finance collateral reuse, different interface. Same topology. And topology has one message. If a collateral chain breaks in the middle, everything downstream implodes. And the shock doesn't stay downstream. Because when the base wobbles, the whole structure reprices. No one gets away unscathed. That's not drama. That's what happens when your system is designed for efficiency first and resilience last. So here's the pinpoint position. The whole blade in one line. Capital efficiency beyond a threshold converts collateral from a stability anchor into a velocity object, and velocity collateral produces fragility. Now breathe that in. A stability anchor is meant to sit there. It's meant to absorb uncertainty. It's meant to be boring. A velocity object is meant to be used, constantly, everywhere, as many times as possible. And the moment the system demands that every unit of collateral must work, you remove slack. And when you remove slack, you remove survival margin. That's the trade, always. Efficiency is not evil, but unbounded efficiency is a fragility factory. Now, this is where you start to understand why certain assets feel harder, why Bitcoin and privacy coins keep showing up in these conversations as first principles collateral, because proof of work enforces an external constraint. Energy, opportunity cost, a thermodynamic receipt, not trust, not governance votes, not we'll manage it responsibly. Proof of work makes the base layer stubborn. It doesn't stop humans from building leverage on top. Humans will always try. But it pushes the financial games upward and outward. It forces the base to remain harder to alchemize. And that containment matters, because containment is what resilience looks like in a complex system. So when you zoom out, the story becomes almost insulting in its simplicity. Traditional finance built a machine that multiplies claims on reused collateral. It requires quantitative easing to prevent the collateral from repricing hard enough to snap the machine. Crypto watched that machine, admired the throughput, and decided to rebuild it faster inside smart contracts. Same incentives, same worship, same trap. Because nobody wants to sell resilience. Resilience sounds like limits, friction, restraint, buffers, and saying no to yield. Efficiency sells better. Efficiency looks like genius right up until it looks like smoke. And then when it breaks, everyone acts shocked. But the pattern was always there. When collateral is shared across too many promises, the system becomes intolerant to truth. It can't handle repricing. It can't handle clearing. It can't handle honest discovery. So it chooses intervention. Backstops in traditional finance. Emergency mechanics in crypto. Different uniforms, same job. Keep the machine alive. So what's the closing message? Not burn it all down as a mood, but understand the choice in front of you. You either build systems that allow slack, or you build systems that demand constant perfection. And systems that demand constant perfection eventually meet reality. Reality never negotiates. Reality collects. Flint West signing off.